Yeah, hello. I'm going to talk about adaptation, so I couldn't have wished for a better introduction than by the keynote we heard this morning. And yeah, my name is Niklas Stein, and yeah, let's start. So during the last, I think, 20 years, a lot of methods for redirected working were developed, and we can see a lot of them here. And all of these methods have one thing in common. We were always interested in the kind of limits of the different techniques. So we wanted to know what is the threshold and how far can we redirect a user with a specific technique. And we had a look at this and thought, well, wouldn't it be, well, all of these things have one thing in common. We measure these thresholds with psychometric curves. And we thought, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could somehow shift the limit? And I think we heard this in the talk before. You somehow reached the limit and then you had to do something with it. So we thought, wouldn't it be nice, the 75% threshold, could we shift it somehow? And we thought, well, the easiest way to do this would be to shift the whole thing. So we thought about this and realized that there's a concept for this in psychology and cognitive neuroscience. And this concept is adaptation. So I'll give you a short example. If you enter in a very dark room, you're not able to see anything. But if you're in this room for a certain amount of time, like 15 minutes or something like that, then your perceptual system and the eye adapts to it. So after 15 minutes, you may be able to see something like this. So the concept of this is that perception can be changed as a result of exposure. So when you stay in the room, then you are exposed to the darkness and you can adapt. But if you would leave the room and would re-enter, then the system would not adapt. And we thought, well, this system could be approached to use it in redirected walking. So we wanted to test that. So what we did is we created a redirected walking scene and we tested it with curvature gains. So short reminder, in curvature gains, I think it was mentioned before, we want to redirect the user on a curved path while he or she is perceiving a straight path in the virtual. So to do that, we rotate the world around the subject while it is moving along a specific axis. And we thought, well, yeah, let's use this adaptation pattern. So we just expose our user like 20 minutes to this kind of environment. So to give you a better impression, I brought a short video clip. So first, let me explain how it works, because a lot of things happening at the same time. So we have like real view over here. This is like the top view of the real motion, and here we have virtual view and virtual top view. So let's have a look at the video clip. So this is basically what we did. We have this kind of desert scene over here. As you can see, the user is walking in a straight line in the virtual, but in the physical world it's doing a curved path. So the curvature gain worked, and that's good. So when we look at the position data, we can see that the curvature gain was working. But of course, to measure this, to measure the perception, we had to also measure thresholds. So what we would need to do is we would need to vary the gain. So we did this, and this looked like this. So let's have a look at the threshold measurements in this video clip over here. So basically, it's the same task as before, but we varied the gain that was applied from trial to trial, and we asked the subject after each trial if it was manipulated to or steered to the right or to the left. So yeah, I think it's basically the same, and I think you get an impression. So we did these threshold measurements, and now let's have a look at the results. So when we did this for the first time, we got this nice psychometric function, and as you would expect when we did redirect with a non-existent gain or with a very low gain, then the users were not sure if they were directed to the right or to the left. So the probability is like chance. And when we did the adaptation session, which was like 150 trials for 20 minutes, then indeed the perceptual threshold and the psychometric function did shift to the right. And we went even further. We looked at the same setting one day after the experiment, and the psychometric function shifted back. So we redid the whole experiment. We also redid the adaptation, and we could replicate the results the next day. So we thought, that's interesting. What does it really mean? So we could see that there's a significant shift in this point of subjective equality. And this kind of means that this gain here is understood or is interpreted as straightforward movement. So when we shift the point of subjective equality, then this gain over here should be interpreted as straightforward after the adaptation, right? So we thought, well, let's test this if this is really the case. So what we would need to do is let the people walk straight forward and not correct their perceptual or their, not correct them by like indicators. So when I walk straight forward and I realize I'm slightly drifting away, then I can correct for this by my visual input. So we had to kind of turn off the visual input, and that's what we did. So we designed a task with like no visual input, and the task was just to walk straight. So when we did this the first time, people were able to walk in a straight line. That's what you would expect. But after the adaptation, we found a significant difference. And we also redid this experiment the next day. As you can see, it slightly shifted back, but I think it's not exactly the same. Then after we did the readaptation, we found this path over here. And I think if you have a look at it, then it looks like curved, right? Yeah. So what does this really mean? I mean, we did this kind of experiment, and we think it has some implications for redirected walking. Well, the adaptation allows to reduce the minimal radius and curvature gains, and hence the physical requirements in redirected walking. I mean, that's interesting for you as well. And we also think that this concept of adaptation might be applicable to other methods as well, because you use thresholds in all of these things. And then when we had a closer look, adaptation shifted the psychometric curve. But it did not really change the slope. And what does this mean? Is that the increased thresholds here on the right side, over here, also led to kind of decreased thresholds on the other side. So leftward gain after the rightward adaptation would be detected faster. And I think in an ideal world, you would want to achieve something like this, where the slope is changed, and we would get on the other side, here on the left side, also would get like lower thresholds. So the changes of slope might result, or it might be able to achieve this by adapting to a broader range of gains. We only did one gain, one curvature gain all the time. Maybe if you would like vary this, then it might be possible to change the slope. And it could also be possible that a long-term effect could be achieved. Like we only did it for 2 days. Maybe if you do it more regularly, then the slope might adapt as well. However, we think one-sided adaptation can already be used, and scenarios can be designed for one-sided steering algorithm. So this technique that we developed here can already be used. So to go even further, we think all of this has some implications for VR as a whole topic, because we could show that users adapt to virtual environments. And we think this can be good when you like use it for redirected walking, but it may also have some bad implications. So VR researchers would need to take adaptation into account when they are developing their scenarios, because what we see here is that with our VR environments, we kind of change perception, and that's scary in a way. Adaptation has been a powerful tool in psychology and cognitive neuroscience for a long time. So I don't want to scare you now, because this is a cool concept, and we think it might be a cool concept in a powerful tool in the VR world as well. So let's come to the conclusions. Adaptation affects perceptual thresholds and walking behavior. It extends the redirected walking techniques, and it enhances the need for careful consideration whenever developing VR application. So that's my IEEE VR talk. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to answer all of your questions. Thank you very much.
Very plain scene without any reference point.
Yeah, for the walking. Yeah.
Do you think of trying to actually check the results of the adaptation in the real world, which is a lot more rich in features, where people actually have a straight path to follow, or choose?
Yeah, I think you have to take into account that in the real world you would have like cues to make you like correct for your error. So even if your perceptual system says, okay, I'm now this is not straight, but I mean, if I want to go over there and I go like this, and I realize, that's not the correct path, so it makes it difficult to kind of do the same thing in the real world, right?
Yeah, but what you can actually see is that we know that when you repeat walking, we don't have the straight camera path. You have a kind of side things. And I would expect that it could be also in the sequence that we should be very conscious of the implication of the strength of the adaptation. So what can happen is that the amplitude of the sinusoid that we normally see is good because they will really have to correct a lot more. And that is actually dangerous, and that we also have an impact on the time that after, say, a redirection walking, redirection experience, how long they have to actually wait until they're allowed to drive a car, or even just go on the street, cross the street or something.
Well, of course, we did not test this, but what I can say is that we also looked at the variance of the data, of the walking data. And 1 day later, when we redid the whole thing, then, I mean, with adaptation, the variance was rising, but after 1 day, it just went back to, yeah, close to normal. So, but yeah, it's a good point, and I think one should consider it in the future, yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot because typically after redirection walking, we say, okay, 1 hour, after 1 hour, you're good to go.
Yeah, but actually we did not test after 1 hour. We only did the test the next day, right? So we just don't know.
How long is 20 minutes, you say?
Yeah, 20 minutes.
And after 24 hours, it's mostly that's right. But I think we should be very careful. Thank you very much. Excellent.
Other questions?
Okay, thank you.